Good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday. I have to say it's 10 o'clock here, so I got to sleep a little later than the rest of you. I am a Hope volunteer. I've been a volunteer for about a year now, and I'm so excited to be here. This is my second time moderating, so thank you for having me. If you would like any more information on Hope Charities, please email info@hope-charities.org. All right, so some little rules. Keep yourself muted, keep your video on. Questions can go in the chat throughout the presentation and will be addressed at the end. Rules for any type of giveaway will also be posted in the chat. Today, we have Gilbert Russell from ASAP on his walk. Good morning, Gilbert.
Good morning. Good morning.
That is who we are sponsored by. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And presenting to us today, Lori Bienvenu from Hope Charities. Take it away, Gilbert.
Good morning. I got two first names, two last names. You know what? Good morning, everyone. This is a melancholy type of day. You know, in the sense that this is day 3. It's been such an exciting time being with you, and I just kind of thinking about how everything was planned in advance. You know, so everything that we've received over this weekend was planned for our benefit. And so I hope that you've gotten more than you thought. And I think that this is a great way to close things out. So ASAP Pharmacy, we're spread out over about 40 states. But the hallmark of what we do is servanthood. We think that complements so well what Hope does. Hope endeavors to make themselves servants in order that those to whom are entrusted to their care know that they're loved and that they're valued. And that's the hallmark of who ASAP has been for the last 20 years, is we try to do everything that we can to educate, equip, and empower each person to live a fuller quality of life beyond the prescription. And so any opportunity that we have to serve this community is not predicated on you being on our service, but we would love to have you on our service. But if you need to be cared for, if you need to be prayed for, please don't ever hesitate to reach out to us. Because servanthood is really what has made us who we are and who we are in this community. And as long as we can do that, we'll continue to strive to make your life, your quality of life, as good as it can be. I have only known Lori for a short period of time, but I think the hallmark of a person's life is how they live it in front of you and the words that they speak. I'm a person that believes that your words can convey life. Your words can also convey some negative things. And so how you learn to love and serve others with your words as well as your action is very paramount. I understand that Lori has a great background in counseling. She has felt the need to further her education in order that she might be better at doing it. So she has a master's degree in counseling, and she's also even taught in the community college. And so here's someone that's not just coming with words off the top of her head. She's coming with a vast amount of experience. She's been the executive director of a nonprofit. And her desire, even this morning, is to give us tools in order that we might be able to live the fullest quality of life we can each day by caring for one another. And I think if we can leave here and take it one step further and know that in this community, everybody in the hemophilia community belongs to everyone in the hemophilia community, and we care for each other in the same way that we'll be taught in these next few minutes, I think it's going to just raise the level of love and admiration that we have for one another and strengthen this community beyond measure. So without further ado, let me turn this over to Lori Bienvenu. Lori, thank you so much for letting us sponsor this session with you.
Thank you, Gilbert, for that great introduction. Thanks to all of you for being here as we talk about self-care today. So I don't really need to do an introduction to myself because Gilbert already pretty much said everything. So you guys know a good bit about me. I do want to add that I have a son with hemophilia. So I have a little bit of professional experience and I have some relevant personal experience. But I want to just put this out there before I even get started. We're talking about self-care today. And one of the reasons this topic is so important to me is because it's something that I struggle with. I think it's something that most of us struggle with, and it's probably something that we don't pay enough attention to. Here I am standing next to the worst picture of me ever taken. So this is a fun way to start an early Saturday morning. So again, we're talking about self-care, not just a walk in the park, and it is completely unplanned and ironic that Gilbert was just going for a walk in the park as we talk about self-care, not just a walk in the park. Before I start, I want to know from all of you guys what it is that you do for self-care. So what are the things that you do to find relaxation, to find rejuvenation, to find energy and excitement? What are the things that keep you going? So you can take a minute to type in the chat box, or you can unmute yourselves for a second and shout it out. But what do we do for self-care?
A walk.
Someone said a walk. Okay, great. Shopping. What else? A hot bath, long baths with crystals and essential oils, crafts.
Watch football.
Nails, yoga, meditation, music, watch TV. Anything else?
Serving others.
I'm sorry, serving others. Yeah, absolutely. Volunteering, listening to music, eating healthy. Okay, so these are all great. These are all things that people do for self-care. These are also the common things that people do for self-care. When we think of self-care, someone just said gardening. These are the commonplace ideas, and they're not wrong. Those are not the wrong things to do for self-care. I hope that by the end of this talk, you will walk away with an expanded knowledge of self-care. Your concept for what self-care is has been just, made wide open. When you think of self-care, you think beyond taking a walk in the park and gardening, biking, enjoying nature. You have this beautiful concept of what it is. I do a suicide intervention talk. It's a 2-day workshop. It's called Assist. And at the end of day 1, we always ask people, what do you do for self-care? And pretty much everyone comes in on day 2, they report what they've done, and everyone says pretty much what you guys have said. I went for a walk. I had a glass of wine with friends. I visited with family. And those are great. No one ever comes in, though, and says, for self-care last night, I closed the door on a toxic relationship. Or, I protected my time and exercised my boundaries by saying no to something. No one ever says those things, but those things are so important, right? And those might even be some of the more effective things that we do for self-care that we forget about, that we don't do. You guys are doing self-care right now by being here, by learning about how you can care for yourself. If you've been sitting with us these last 2 days, you are doing self-care. Right? A lot of the things that we do are self-care. They're just not really our go-to when they probably should be. I'm surprised to hear, at a hemophilia event, no one mentioned prophy. Isn't prophy a form of self-care? It is. Maybe you don't think of it that way. Maybe you're not doing it, in which case we probably should talk about this great event we have in the spring called Prophy Conference. But, all of those things are self-care. So we just really need to open our mind about what is involved there and take advantage of some of those things. These are some images that I came across when I was looking for ideas about what to put in this presentation. And I was really surprised by some of these and a little bit saddened by some of these. This first image it's a bathtub, and this first little circle says 86% of consumers engage in personal care as a self-care activity. This brings us to our first myth about self-care. We're going to talk about 3 of these as I go through this talk. But the first myth is that self-care is expensive. I think the reason we have this idea is because that's what marketing would have us believe, right? 86% of consumers engage in personal care. This image was titled Self-Care, What's Hot, What's Not, and you can see it has to do with buying personal care items, personal hygiene items, cosmetics and beauty products. For a lot of people, when they think self-care, they think manis and petties, right? Getting a massage, taking a hot bubble bath with a $10 bath fizzy in it. Those are great, aren't they? Who can afford to do those every week? Who can afford to rush out and get a massage every time you're feeling stressed? Or who can afford the $10 bath bomb in their bathtub every day? Those things do lead us to believe that self-care is expensive. But again, probably some of the most effective things you can do for self-care are the things that absolutely cost Nothing. In fact, research shows that doing self-care probably puts money in your pocket in the long run, because we know if you're doing self-care, you're experiencing less stress. If you have less stress in your life, you have less physical illnesses, which means less trips to the doctor, less medication, right? So in the long run, self-care probably can save you money. But the other thing that I hate about this myth, about this entire image here, is it suggests that only women are doing self-care. Most men are not taking a fizzy bubble bath. Right? In that workshop, that workshop that I just told you about, the military guys used to love to come in and say, I ran 5 miles last night for self-care. The 5 miles is really important. And I always thought, you ran 5 miles to relax? Okay, that's not working for me, but it's your self-care, whatever. But none of those guys ever came in and said, and after I soaked in a fizzy bubble bath. Some of them might have been, some of them probably were, they would never admit that. But most men are not doing that for self-care. Most men are not going to take the warm fuzzy bubble bath, or they're not getting a manicure and a pedicure for self-care, right? So when we look in self-care this way, we probably are excluding a large portion of the population, when really men need self-care just as much as women. Everyone needs to do self-care. So our next slide is aspects of self-care. This is where you get to see what self-care really looks like. Before I talk about these 8 aspects, there are 8 of them, I want to talk about what self-care is. It can be something simple. Self-care can be as simple as going for a walk in the park, taking the bubble bath, but it can be so much more. The important thing is that self-care meets our needs. It should be something that we're doing daily. When I say meet your needs, if you're just, if you're having a long day at work and you need to just relax for a little bit, relaxing can be self-care. If you're experiencing some big issue in your life that's going on and on and on, your self-care is going to need to be a lot bigger. So self-care can be the things that you do to unwind after the end of a long day. It can be the things that you do to protect yourself from going into a deep, dark place. It can be the things that you do to get yourself out of a deep, dark place. So it can be relaxing, it can be rejuvenating, it can be exciting, it can be healing. Anything really can be considered self-care, as long as it's something you do for yourself to get you to a better place. The important thing is self-care needs to be done daily. A lot of people, when we think of self-care, we think of, I found myself in a bad spot, now it's time to start doing self-care. Really though, if we're doing self-care every day, we're using self-care to prevent us from going into that bad spot. And that's really the ultimate goal of self-care. It's to prevent us from going into a deep, dark place, right? It's to keep us healthy. So as I talk about these 8 aspects, some of them might apply to you. Maybe all of them apply to you. Some of them maybe won't apply to you, and that's okay. My challenge to you right now is to just learn about these things and try to recognize the areas in your life where you need improvement. Self-care is all about improvement. It's all about growth. If you hear one of these and you think, I really need to work on that, maybe just write it down so you can come back to it later. But use this as a way to really develop a plan for yourself, a self-care plan. The first aspect that we're going to talk about is physical self-care. This means you're taking care of yourself physically. You're eating properly, you're drinking enough water, you're getting enough rest, you're exercising. It can look like a lot of different things. This can be taking a bubble bath. That would be physical self-care. Again, it's not wrong. It's just a lesser form of self-care. If you're looking to amp up your self-care routine, this is probably where you would want to start. You would want to start with physical self-care because it's the easiest and it's the most present in our lives. And it's probably one of the ones we struggle with the most. And there's so many tools that can help you with this. Some of them you're probably using and you probably don't even realize that can be rolled into self-care. So if you have apps on your phone that help you track your calorie intake, your energy expenditure, your exercise every day, those are great tools to help you get into that self-care mindedness. If sleep is a problem for you, 1 in 3 Americans don't get enough sleep consistently. If you need to, understand your sleep habits, if you have an Apple Watch, there's a sleep app that you can get on your Apple Watch to track your sleep patterns. You can get those on your phones as well to kind of help you understand your sleep cycle. Lots of good places to start, but it's all physical self-care. You just have to start doing it. The next one is psychological self-care. This means that you are, you're physically, and you're not just physically present, you're emotionally present, you're mentally present in your space. It has to do with expanding your inner self. So this can be using creativity, it can be learning new things. One of the things that a lot of people do for self-care is reading. That would be an example of psychological self-care. It might be a self-help book. It may just be a book with a positive message to it. Some of my friends are in this book club and they make it a habit of reading a book every month. That would make me insane because I would almost never be able to check that off my list. So that's not good self-care for me, but for them it works great. Also creativity, maybe you're lacking in exerting your creative energies. Maybe you've been wanting to learn to do something new, maybe, learning to sew or learning to do woodworking, right? All of those things could be psychological self-care. One of the ones that, this is both my biggest pet peeve and also my biggest flaw is is being psychologically present. My biggest pet peeve is when you are in a room full of people or a group and it's a social setting and half of them are on their phone. Or my husband says I'm too critical sometimes, but you'll see people on Facebook, they're on vacation, and every 3 or 4 times a day they're posting pictures and saying, this is the greatest vacation ever. We're having the time of our lives. Well, I don't know about you, but when I'm having the time of my life, the last thing I'm thinking about is posting about it on Facebook, right? So are you really psychologically present in that moment? For me, this was my struggle. When I started working here at Hope, I live an hour away from the office. So for the first couple of months until I learned the job, I was commuting back and forth a lot. And so that meant rushing out of the house in the morning to get the kids out, getting home in the afternoon, rushing to get dinner ready and the kids in their jammies and everybody fed and put off to bed at a decent time. And so our lives were just a rushed mess for a couple of months. And then I noticed I started getting really irritable. I was snapping at the kids. I wasn't my best person. My husband kindly helped me realize that. It was kind. But I realized I was lacking in self-care. I needed time for myself so I could be physically present, mentally present for my kids, because just being physically present was not enough. And so I had to start doing self-care. We have to find those moments in our lives where we are at our weakest, where we're not at our best place, and figure out how to fix them. And oftentimes self-care is the answer. Emotional self-care has to do with being conscious, aware, able to control your emotions, including stress, because stress is an emotion. This might mean simply reflecting on feelings. Our feelings influence our behavior. If you're acting a certain way and you're not really sure why, take some time. Sit with your thoughts, sit with your feelings, figure out if there's a connection there. Another thing about emotional self-care is this might involve challenging negative thoughts. This one is difficult for a lot of people. But when I think negative thoughts, I always think shoulda, coulda, woulda. I should have done this. I could have done this, but I didn't. And I wish I would have done that. It's living in the past when really you should be, because you can't change that, right? We have to live in the present. So anytime we're trying to challenge negative thoughts, it involves recognizing that a negative thought exists and then working to overcome it. It does take some time. It takes some practice because negative thoughts come to us automatically sometimes, but getting them out of our head is not so automatic. If you learn to recognize those, it becomes a lot easier to work on moving past them. And then when they come back in the future, it'll be a lot easier to just say, oh, wait, that's a negative thought. I don't need to deal with that right now, right? Practice makes perfect. The more you practice doing it, the more effective you will be at doing it. Social self-care. This means you are nurturing social relationships. You have relationships in your life that are nurturing, that are caring, that you've invested time and energy planting the seed and watering it, and it's grown into this beautiful friendship or relationship. 2 things about social relationships that can be self-care. One might just be visiting with people, right? So it can be visiting because you're in a great place and you want to go and nurture that relationship. You want to love on those people because you have the time and the energy to devote to them. It could also be drawing from those resources when you need them. So you're in a bad place and you need for them to love on you, right? You need support from them. I think sometimes people feel like they don't want to draw on their social relationships because they don't want to be a burden, but really that is probably one of the best things you can do for yourself in terms of self-care. Imagine that you're in a tough spot at work. You have this big project going on, you're under a time deadline, there's a whole lot of pressure on you. Those social relationships, probably none of them can go to your job and do your job for you. However, there's probably someone that can provide support for you, right? They can be your shoulder to cry on. They can listen to you. They can be your encouragement. They can be your cheerleader. And sometimes that's really all we need. We need support from people. We need for them to tell, even though we know we can do it, hearing that from somebody else, you can do this, you got this. It's like that extra boost of energy that you just need sometimes. Financial self-care, I believe, is our next one. Let me just make sure. Yes, financial self-care. This means that you are money conscious, that you know where your money's coming from, you know how you're spending it, you have a balanced budget, you worry about, you save like you're supposed to, you're not spending more than you're making. I would safely say that if we asked everyone in this room if you need to do some financial self-care, probably everyone would say yes. Because there's probably not a single person in here that has not experienced financial stress at some point in their lives. And probably a significant portion of you are experiencing financial stress right now. It's an overarching theme in our life. That being said, it probably should be an overarching theme in our self-care. The things that cause you more stress are the things that you need to devote more self-care to. So probably this one should be at the top of everyone should be writing down financial self-care right now. Right? We probably all need to come back to this one.
Shopping self-care.
Shopping self-care is not on here. Okay, spiritual self-care. This means that you have values and beliefs in your life that serve as your guiding principles. This is what Gilbert was talking about this morning in his introduction. Having those beliefs is important. Living them out every day is even more important. It's one of the things that I love most about working here at Hope. I feel like this is one of our strengths. Everyone that works here has been selected to work here because we have values and principles that we all live out every day in our lives, in our personal lives at home with our family and our friends, and that extends here to our professional environment. And that's not, unfortunately, everyone doesn't have that same luxury, but we do. So spiritual self-care can look like a lot of different things. You can have a spiritual life without being religious, and vice versa. So spiritual self-care can be attending a church service, participating in a spiritual retreat. It can be meditation. It can be prayer. Basically, you're focusing on what are your guiding principles, what are your morals, what are your values, and how do you live those out in your day-to-day life. I feel like this is a cause of conflict for a lot of people because oftentimes our professional environments don't allow us to exercise our spiritual beliefs, right? And so if that's a source of conflict for you, then this would be a good avenue for you to do some spiritual self-care and professional when we get down to the bottom. So our next one is environmental self-care. This means that your environment is conducive to success, whether it's your home life, your work life, whatever. Everything within your environment promotes you as an individual and allows you to maximize your output. An example of environmental self-care might be decluttering your home or your office space, right? To be more effective. When I think personally for me, environmental self-care is doing the dishes. This sounds completely crazy. I hate doing dishes. But when we go to after dinner every night, I get up from the table, even my little kids go and put their dishes in the sink. I clean the kitchen. We go and relax before we go to bed. If I don't do the dishes, if I don't clean the kitchen, then I'm sitting on the sofa going, the kitchen is dirty. The kitchen is dirty. Oh my gosh, the kitchen is dirty. I'm going to have to wash dishes when I wake up in the morning. And then I go to bed aggravated. And then I wake up aggravated the next day because the first thing I see is the dirty dishes in the kitchen. I don't like waking up to dirty dishes in the kitchen. Environmental self-care for me is washing the dishes. No matter how much I hate doing it, I hate not doing it. even more. So it's a little bizarre. From a hemophilia perspective, one of my earliest experiences, when my oldest son has hemophilia, he's 4 now. When Matt was 6 months old, my poor beautiful baby was just covered in bruises just from picking him up. And he was learning how to crawl. And I was so nervous about that because I thought, more bruises. And Jenny, I don't know if Jenny Moore is on this call, but Jenny was one of the first people that I connected with in the hemophilia world. And Jenny is a hemo mom. Oh, there she is. Hi, Jenny. Jenny, and so I messaged her and I said, look, Matt is starting to crawl and I'm so worried about him. What do we do? And she said, rugs and rug pads, the thickest ones you can find. And so I did. I took her advice and we went out and we bought rugs. We had hardwood floors all over our house. Our house was covered in rugs. It was like a zoo because the dog thought they were potty pads. It was horrible. And so we spent, months cleaning rugs. But our kid was safe. He didn't have bruises everywhere. We bought those interlocking foam mats for his bedroom. It was wonderful. And it gave us such peace of mind, something as simple as putting rugs down, right? Environmental self-care, making your environment what you need to live a successful, happy, peaceful life. The last one is professional self-care. This means that your work environment is it's fulfilling. It promotes everything that you need for it to be, right? So it's a happy, successful workplace. This can be a lot of different things. So this might be practicing professional self-care. It might be having a conversation with your boss about what your kid needs. So my kid has a bleeding disorder. I'm going to need to take my kid to extra doctor's appointments. How can we make this work so that I'm still getting my job done, but I'm getting the time away from the office that I need? It might be setting boundaries. Before I worked here at Hope we have very loose boundaries. But in other jobs, I didn't have close working relationships with the people that I worked with, and I was totally fine with that. And so I didn't want those people on my social media pages. I kept those completely different. And so, you get friend requests from people, and I just had to separate those things and say, I don't want that to happen. So setting boundaries between the personal and professional could be professional self-care. It might be something as simple as taking a lunch break. Some offices are real busy and hectic, and I've seen offices where everybody eats lunch at their desk because they don't have time to take 30 minutes to themselves to eat lunch. Well, some people are fine with that, but if you need those 30 minutes to clear your head and come back and do your job adequately, take your 30 minutes. It's really for all of these things. All of these things are about becoming the master of your own life. And these are the areas where you need to work to become the master of your own life. But it's up to you to take those, right? No one is just gonna say, I'm worried. Some people will. I'm worried about you. You need to go and take 30 minutes. No, most of the time, those people are so wrapped up in their own world. They're doing their own thing. You have to be self-aware enough to say, I need this time for myself. I need to do self-care right now. So I've just given you a lot of examples about self-care, but there are 4 things that I want to point out that I've noticed consistently over time, people just have a hard time with. So these might not all apply to you right now, and maybe some of them don't apply to you at all, but some of these probably will. So consider these in the future. So this is, just more examples of what self-care can look like. This first one says no. This is about protecting your time. We've probably all been in a situation where we are overwhelmed, right? We have a lot going on. We're just we're struggling to get through our day. And then somebody comes to us and says, could you please do this for me? Sometimes you just have to say no. And a lot of times it becomes a cost-benefit analysis, right? You're weighing the risks and the benefits. And that's okay. That's a good way to approach it. If the risk to you outweighs the benefit to that person or to that relationship, the answer should automatically be no. And if the risk to you is more stress, more anxiety, if it's going to cause you issues, you should say no. And if it's a supportive social relationship, you should feel comfortable saying no because they should understand. Sometimes we just have to protect our time. This next one is social media. When's the last time you unplugged? Just completely unplugged.
And how much time out of your day goes into social media, scrolling Facebook, watching TikTok videos, Twitter. I don't even know what they are because I do Facebook and nothing else. I'm like an old person and I'm not even that old yet. But really, I mean, we spend so much time on social media, and for what? Is it healthy? For all the great things there are about social media, there are so many negative things. Again, the cost benefit. But sometimes just give yourself the power, empower yourself to unplug. Especially if there's negativity on social media, maybe the rumor mill is running and your name is being dragged through it. What do? Most people are on there all the time. I got to see what everybody's saying. I got to see what everybody's doing. Well, that's the unhealthy approach. The healthy approach is to just back away, right? It's just to say, I don't need to deal with this. You can't control what they're saying. You can't control what people are doing, but you can control you. You can control what you're doing, what you're seeing, your response to it. And so that's what you need to do. The healthy thing to do is to just say, I am going to step away from this. And over time, they'll get bored and move on to something else, like any other 4-year-old would, but be the big person and remove yourself from it and save yourself a lot of heartache in the end. Sometimes you can't just unplug from people. There's probably somebody in your life right now that you wish you could just disconnect from, right? That you could just say, I don't want to deal with that person ever again. But life is life. It's not social media. We can distance ourselves as much as we want in social media. We can't always do that in real life, not to the extent we want to. But when you can, you should. If somebody is the negative source of energy in your life, distance yourself as much as you can. It's okay to say, I really love you, but I cannot be around you right now. That's not something hurtful for them. That's something healthy for you, right? Saying no is not a dirty word. Saying no is self-care. And, if they can't understand that, well, if you really need to be away from that person that much, what is the true benefit of that relationship? Sometimes you got to start digging deeper and really get to the roots of things. The last one is making a difficult decision. There are good difficult decisions and there are bad difficult decisions. The good difficult decisions are the ones where you have a lot of choices and there's some good options there, right? And choosing one, saying yes to something means saying no to something else that you really want. Those are the good difficult decisions. The bad ones are the ones where all your choices are bad. A is not good, B is not good, C is not good, but you still have to choose one. So what happens? You think about it. Then you think about it some more. Then you think about it some more. And then you get stressed out. And then you make a decision without any rational thought going into it because you're just stressed out and you want to make a decision. Does the decision get any easier over time? No, it never gets easier. It just gets worse. The best thing you can do in this situation, give yourself an appropriate amount of time to contemplate your options. Just make a choice. Because buying time is not going to make it get any better over time. And your decision-making abilities are going to decrease over time because you're experiencing more stress. So sometimes you just have to make the choice. I wanted to talk about these specifically because I feel like they just come up so often. And rather than dealing with them, we push them aside. Or we make the wrong choice because we don't realize we have power in these situations. Maybe because they're not ideal. Because saying no really might be hurtful to someone, or making that difficult decision is stressful for us. It does cause us to have anxiety. But we need to be proactive in all of these situations, and it all involves self-care. Excuse me. Okay. Next slide, please. I want to talk about the role of self-care, which brings us to our second myth. Remember, our first myth is that self-care is expensive. Our second myth is that self-care is adding to our to-do list. This is not necessarily the case. I like this image. Here we have a man with all, juggling balls, and I think everyone's probably familiar with the phrase balls in the air, which just means you have a whole lot of stuff going on, right? You're juggling things, you're shuffling things, there's a lot going on. Self-care is not just another ball. Self-care belongs down here. Self-care is part of you. Self-care is building the foundation. I liken this to your car. What makes your car go? Gas, right? If you don't put gas in your car will not go. If you don't give your body food, oxygen, water, your body will not go. You simply die, just like your car. If you don't put gas in your car is going to die. It's not going to go anywhere. Putting gas in your car, though, isn't the only thing that makes your car go. That makes it go, but the thing that makes your car go smoothly is getting your oil changed, getting your filter changed, right? Making sure there's coolant, changing some spark plugs every now and again, But those are the things that make your car go smoothly and effectively. Self-care is the thing that makes you go smoothly and effectively, right? You can give your body food and water and oxygen and it'll still go. Is it going to go at its best, at its maximum performance? No. You need to have self-care for that. So that's why self-care is not another ball. It's not just a thing on your to-do list. Self-care is the thing that enables you to get all these things going. It's the thing that enables you to keep all of those balls up in the air without dropping one. So we have, you can go to the next slide, please. Our third myth is that self-care means taking time away from other people. I call this the self-care stigma, right? It's the thing that causes people guilt. It's the anxiety people feel that prevents them from doing self-care because they feel like when they do self-care, they're taking time away from other people. I think a lot of people divide their time, their lives into their personal life and their professional life for the sake of simplicity. I know I do this. Our personal life being our homes, our families, our kids, our friends, our, all the people involved in our home life. It's our chores, dishes and laundry, paying bills, taking care of our pets, cutting grass. Whereas our professional life is not just showing up to work on time and doing our job. It's also, our professional obligations. It's representing ourselves well in our community as a member of that organization. And these two are not mutually exclusive, right? I spend a lot of time in my personal life making sure that my clothes is clean so I can go to work, putting gas in my car so that I can go to work, making sure my kids have care so that I can go to work. So there's some overlap here, but for the most part, these two, we kind of separate them. And a lot of people feel like if you have balance in your personal life and your professional life, then you're going to be healthy, you're going to be adjusted, right? So I have my weights here that have teeth marks on them. I don't know if it's from the kids or the dog, but my weights have teeth marks on them. So these represent all of the things in our lives, right? Our personal life and our professional life. So we tend to think that our having balance looks like this, right? Where everything is equally balanced, but this isn't the case. This week we had a conference. So my life looked more like this, dedicating more time to my professional life and less time to my personal life. Sometimes it looks like this. So really a balance is kind of like this, right? We're more like a seesaw rather than just being like this. What enables us to do this? It's me. It's the person. I am the foundation that holds all these things together. And without this solid foundation, these things cannot just stay up like this. Doing self-care is not dropping these and forgetting about them. We're not just taking time out of our personal and our professional. Doing self-care looks like this. I'm going to put this right here so I can focus on me, so I can build a solid foundation. And you know what? I still see all this stuff. It's still right here in front of me. So when I'm making those difficult decisions, I'm probably deciding those things based on what's in the best interest of my kids, in my family, right? When I am saying no to protect my time, it's probably because I know I have extra work obligations. All of this stuff is still right here. I'm not throwing it away. I still see it. That is self-care. You are just putting this down so that you can work on the foundation, build a solid foundation so that when you pick this up, you are an even stronger person, right? So you can balance all of this plus more. You can add more. Self-care allows you to add more to everything that you're already doing. You are simply building the foundation to support everything else around you. Okay, our last slide. I absolutely love this quote. It says, the foundation of all personal development is self-acceptance and self-love. Again, you are the foundation, right? You are the foundation in your life that keeps all those things going so that you can be a foundation.
Classic or spicy?
Right? Being a leader starts with having a solid foundation. I want to go back to the title of this talk, Self-Care, Not Just a Walk in the Park. And I named it that because I really like the two meanings that are tied in there. The first being, when we say something's a walk in the park, first, self-care is not just a walk in the park, right? We've just talked about a whole lot of things that you can do for self-care beyond going for a walk, doing exercise, taking the bubble bath. Again, those things are not wrong. So what I was saying is self-care is not just a walk in the park. It's not, there's a lot more to self-care besides just walking, going for a walk or exercising. All those things are self-care. There's so much more you can be doing. We just talked about some of those. The other meaning of a walk in the park is that it's not easy. When we say something's a walk in the park, we mean something is easy. And we know that self-care is not easy. I would even say that because self-care is not easy, that's probably one of the reasons why so many people aren't doing it. Only 1 in 3 people practice self-care. If it were easy, everyone would be doing it, but everyone is not doing it. And I think this quote holds the meaning behind the reason behind why people are not doing it. It's because it involves self-acceptance and self-love. Self-acceptance being, I recognize where I'm at right now, and I know that there are areas in my life that need improvement, right? I know that there are places that I could be stronger, and I'm just not. I think most of us are able to accept that. I think a lot of us are able to accept that. Let me just say that. I don't think the problem here is self-acceptance. I think the problem is self-love. I think we're so busy in our lives loving other people that we forget that we need love too, right? Other people loving us is not enough. We have to love ourselves. So when we're doing self-care, what we're really saying is, I accept myself right now with all of my shortcomings enough to invest in my future. I'm going to love myself enough to invest in my future, because that slide I just showed you, the personal life and the professional life, those things are going to keep growing. Your personal life is, your kids are going to grow, your house is going to grow, your obligations are going to grow, everything at work is going to grow. You have to be able to grow with it. And if you're not doing self-care, you're not building that foundation, you're not making yourself stronger, those things are going to grow without you. And it's not going to become easier to deal with those things and accept them. It's only going to become harder. So we have to accept where we are. We have to recognize our shortcomings so that we know where to put those energy and resources into so that we can grow, right? We have to, self-acceptance is self-love. Self-care is self-love. We are building that foundation so that we can become the leader in our lives. And if you focus on all 8 areas that we just talked about, you will become a leader in your life. And then you become a leader in the community, and then you become a leader for a lot of people, right? But you can't do that if you're not a leader for yourself. And it starts with self-acceptance and self-love.
So good. So good. Wow.
We have a live audience here. Okay, guys, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have at this point.
All right, I'm looking at the chat. Anybody have any questions, or anybody want to unmute and ask Lori a question? Lori, that was insane. That was so good.
So good.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Lori. Hey, Lori.
Yes, sir.
You know what's always, I know my biggest struggle is that everything that you discussed, I was trying to put on a priority list because everything is easy to do, but as Jim Rome says, it's also easy not to do. And then once you fail, then, it's hard trying to get back on your feet. Do you have a feel, or can you give give me a good challenge on how I should so prioritize things? Should I take the C priority one, the one that seems it's the easiest to do, and do that one first and check it off as a success and move into others? Or how would you go about determining which of these self-care disciplines you should do first?
Well, I think that's a matter of preference. I mean, some people like that feeling of accomplishment, so they like to start with the easier things first, right? So you can check that off. And if you're one of those people, you need to check things off your box, then starting at the simplest would probably be most effective for you. I'm more of a recognize the internal pressure kind of person. I love checking things. I love checking things off the list. But if there's some big issues, pressing over me, then that needs to be my focus. Like, okay, so you come home after a stressful day and you just need to unwind and you need to go take a bubble bath. That's fine. But if my biggest issue is not the stressful day that I had, if it's, some big decision that's hanging over my head that I really need to deal with, that's still going to be there when I come out of the bubble bath. And so for me, that's not going to be an effective form of self, because I'm still going to be thinking about that. So I need to focus on that first. It's really, it's a personal decision, For me, it's the biggest stressor in my life is the thing that I need to deal with. For some people, it's checking things off of a box. Either are okay. It's whatever gives you the greatest relief, I think.
No, thank you.
That's wonderful, Lori. Thank you for asking that question, Gilbert. I have a question from the chat. It says from Amy, how do we as women set boundaries with our family members when we need self-care?
Okay, that is a good question. And that is something that I struggled with. Like I mentioned, for me, it was my self-care ended up being waking up at 4:30 in the morning. As much as I hate doing dishes, I hate waking up even early, even more. But I also recognized that I was not going to ever get time to myself if I didn't make time for myself. And I knew personally, I didn't have it inside me to just say, okay, y'all need to go sit in the living room on your tablets for a little while mommy does some self-care. That was never going to happen in my life. So I had to find the time to do it on my own. And that meant getting up at 4:30 so I could have an hour of time to myself before my kids started waking up, because my kids don't like to sleep. They're up at like 5:30 every morning. That had to be my time. So you have to set boundaries. You have to say no. You have to protect your time. It's not easy. Again, self-care is not easy, but if you need that time for yourself, you have to take that time. No one's going to give it to you. You have to make it for yourself. Does that answer your question, Amy?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, I should mention I have 3 boys. My oldest is 4 and my baby is about to turn a year old. So I get the mom struggle about self-care. It's unfortunate. We just need an extra hour in our day. So if anybody has strings they can pull to make the day an extra hour, I would really appreciate that. So I don't have to wake up at 4:30 to do self-care.
Absolutely. You roll the clock back 1 hour when you get up.
Yeah, every day.
And don't look at it ever again. The one thing that came to mind to me also, Lori, was the idea of all of these disciplines becoming normalized. So I think what you're saying with regard to self-care, how it impressed me was how this needs to be, it doesn't need to be a chore. It needs to be something that I should be conscious of as I go about my day. And so I think you need to do this session like every Hope Conference goes. I'm a remedial guy and I need to be reminded over and over and over and over and over and over again.
I agree, Gilbert. It's like you need to keep this in the forefront because, I find myself getting stuck in autopilot in life a lot, and I have these moments that I call like it's hard to describe, but it's almost like you wake up and you realize, oh man, this is real. Everything is real around me. And this person, my wife is a real person with feelings and like, oh my gosh, this is all actually happening. And that happens to so many people where we just get stuck in autopilot and we're just going throughout life and being present in the moment is such a gift to be able to do. And I need this every day. This is so great. Lori, you did such a fantastic job. I'm proud to be on your team. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brad.
Do you have any more questions?
I want to add to what Gilbert said. It really, self-care really needs to become a routine in our lives. Just like you get out of bed and brush your teeth every morning, self-care should be part of that. And it's hard. I get it. It's hard. I'm not talking about spending 3 hours on yourself every day. Even if you just identify your target area, what do you need to be focusing on now? And just spend 15 or 20 minutes a day. It's probably a great improvement over what you're already doing. If your self-care is the 2 minutes you spend to, thank baby Jesus for your wonderful day before you go to bed at night. If that's all you're doing, then adding 10 minutes to that is a great improvement,
Sure.
So we just need to focus on making it part of our everyday life.
I got one more comment, and I promise I'll be quiet. Yeah, right. Right, Gilbert, you'll be quiet. Can you challenge us, Lori, to care for one another in this way? I think it's what you pointed to us is something that I'm going to begin to ask anyone that I talk to. That how are you taking care of you? What are you going to do to take care of yourself today? Is that something that we should not only embrace as a community with each other, but just embrace as a question to ask those that we love and care for on a day-to-day basis?
Absolutely. I love that, Gilbert. But I also want to say, I bet you're probably already doing that in your own way. When I talked about emotional self-care, I talked about being present. I'm sorry, when I talked about social self-care, well, it actually fits in a couple of different places, but you're one of those people that you live out what you believe, and that's what emotional psychological self-care is, that you're practicing what you preach. And I think it's great to ask that question to make sure people really are catching it. But I also feel like the conversations that you're doing with people or having with people are self-care. And I think the inspiration that you give them can be taken as self-care. So I think you're already doing that and I love that you want to keep that idea going. I certainly would say that would be a great thing to do. But I also think simply living out the things that we want to see in other people is one of the best gifts that we can give them. Lead by example, right?
Amen. Amen.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate all of you being here this morning and tuning in and doing self-care. You guys just did a whole hour of self-care. Whether you can check that off your list for today. So thank you all so very much.